Friends, family, and cohorts, welcome back to the Fight or Flight podcast, where we illuminate remarkable individuals who have faced adversity, emerged stronger, and resurrected themselves for the best. I'm Myles Levin, broadcasting from rural Maryland, and today's guest truly needs no introduction. His athletic accomplishments and civic contributions are world class. A father, husband, entrepreneur, artist, stand-up comic, motivational speaker, philanthropist, and a stoic force of nature. In my opinion, an all-around extraordinary human being. One of the 80 greatest Washington Redskins commanders of all time and a four-time Pro Bowler, this athlete built his legacy over 5 impactful seasons in Washington, averaging over 86 tackles and nearly 10 sacks per year. He currently ranks fourth on the franchise's all-time sack list, an incredible stat considering he played 74 games. Lasting impact. Growing up in Austin, Texas, this individual went on to play at Cal, was drafted 12th overall in the 1988 NFL Draft by the Phoenix Cardinals. He has battled through serious injury, including a torn ACL and rotator cuff, and still earned one of the most significant contracts in Washington's history at that time. He has shown up, he has shown out, and more importantly, he stayed true to what matters most: the work, the people, and his teammates, and the game. He came to DC not to simply earn stats, but to be part of something bigger. Wins were hard earned, and respect followed immensely. And today, I am stoked to welcome Mr. Ken Harvey. Ken, thank you for joining us, brother.
I don't know how much I need to pay you for that intro, but you start hearing stuff like that, and you're like, "Wow, I did all that. I appreciate it, but you just try to do the best you can with what you have." So I can, we can talk, and I can tell you a little bit about the pre stuff because I did go to Berkeley, but previously I had dropped out of high school and didn't play my senior year of high school football. And so when I went back, I finished up high school, didn't play my senior year of high school football, and everyone was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I want to go to college. And there was no belief, didn't have the money. My grades weren't any good. There was no way I'm going to go to college. And it got really kind of, really bad at one time because, you start doubting yourself. You start feeling like, what's your self-worth? And so for me, I was on the brink. Fortunately, I tried to take my life. Right, I drank up all the lighter fluid. I took a bunch of pills, and I didn't die. And I'm on my knees praying, and I'm asking God. I'm like, just say something, give me something. And it felt like God said, you have a purpose and a destiny. And once I heard that, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing something. And so I ended up going back to school, finishing up high school. Met a guy in a gym of all places. I'm working out. I'm super yoked up. Met a guy in a gym, and he told me about a junior college in Oakland, California. And I had never traveled outside as far as I could walk. Two parents, 7 kids, one car, and so I hadn't been anywhere. First time on a plane, and we go to Oakland, California, and then I go to a junior college there for 2 years. And then, out of all things, get a scholarship to the University of California, Berkeley. So that's where the story picks up.
Oh, remarkable.
Yeah,
Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. I did not know that depth of trauma and what you had to persevere to succeed. So thank you. Along those lines, Ken, and in addition to what you shared with us, as an adult, was there a moment in your life, on or off the field, where you thought, man, I'm not sure I can make it through this? And how did you get through it?
I don't know if it's, I didn't think I'd get through it. When I tore my ACL, I tore my ACL, and I think shortly thereafter, I also had rotator cuff surgery on my shoulder. So I'm in a cast and with my leg, and you're kind of like, it's like, okay, I knew a lot of guys back then. When you had an ACL tear, it was career-ending injury for the most part. And so, for me, once again, it was kind of going back to that thing of believing that you can do it and to try to prove to everybody. I think that was kind of the thing. Even going back to school and the college was I wanted to prove to everybody that I wasn't dumb, and I wanted to prove to everybody that I can make a comeback. And so I worked, I pat myself on the back, but I busted my butt. But then fortunately, I also had great coaches, strength coaches that really worked with me to help me get my leg strength back and all that. And so, for a moment, it was that moment. There was a time when me and my wife we had our first son, Nathaniel Ray Harvey. So everyone knows I have two kids. We had our first son. He passed away from SIDS at 6 weeks.
Oh my
And
God.
so, fortunately, I think for me it was easier because I could take out my anger or frustration in football, and you just hit somebody, and you were around practice, everything was moving. It was a lot tougher for my wife because she had to stay home and just deal with it. And I'm sure every place she looked at, that was our firstborn, and so it was tough, and then tough knowing that you couldn't really do anything to help her on her side.
Taking that emotion and all that trauma out on the football field is clearly cathartic and helpful. But after the football field, when you were with yourself, did any of that pain turn to bitterness to either life, the game, the team, yourself, circumstance?
No, once I had dropped out, once I felt like I had a purpose, it was always then just suck it up, deal with it, keep going. Deal with the pain, push it down, keep going. And that was kind of my routine. I guess along those lines, the hardest thing was I had promised myself that once I quit football in high school, I was like, I'll never quit again. And so I used to train. I used to always say in my mind, you won't stop, you won't give up. You always got to keep going. Got to be the best, got to push yourself. And so once I retired, it wasn't a retirement because I wanted to. I had some injuries and some stuff, and I was really kind of lost. And so I retired. In that moment, I felt so alone because I felt like I quit and I gave up. And the very thing that I promised myself I would never do, I felt like I did. And so while I was kind of in the world, because everybody knew me, and you still had that star because you just retired and this stuff, I was like the loneliest person in the world and felt like I was the lowest person in the world. And so I was kind of walking depression or fearful, and I just kind of went in my shell. I was a good actor in front of everybody. I kind of did my stuff, but by myself, I was pretty down for a long time because I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. I hadn't really planned beyond that, and so I just kind of I, I was trying to figure out what to do, and what I wanted to do was pretty much different than what everybody saw athletes doing, right? You should be a sports commentator, you should be an announcer, you should be a coach. And it's not that I couldn't be, but that's what they said. That's what you should be. And so I just went within myself and just kind of hid in broad daylight. I guess that's the best way to say it. I hid in broad daylight.
And what brought you out of the hiding into the person you are now?
This is 20 years later. This is a long time. This was a long, long time. But I started reading Exodus in the Bible, Exodus 4:2,
Yeah.
and God was talking to Moses, and He said, Moses had. I kind of looked at the whole story and said, well, that's kind of me, right? And so I was like, Moses was the prince of Egypt, and I was like, I had my football career. And then I wandered around for years, 20 years, 30 years, and he was okay being just having his staff and tending sheep. And then he saw that moment where God came to him and he said, what's in your hand? And Moses said, the staff. And he said, throw it on the ground, and it became a snake. And Moses ran away from it. And God told him to go back and pick it up. And I felt like that's what God was saying to me: go back and pick it up. You got talent. What's in your hand? What you think is just a stick, a staff. And so for me, the talents that I thought I had was just this. God was like, go back and pick it up. And so I went and I had did a children's book when I was playing football with Terry Crews. Let me go and look at it. I started looking at my children's book, and I called up Cruz, and I'm like, we did this book, but I want to really do it again, and try to do it well. And he was like, you know what? I'll pay for everything. We'll do everything. Let's do this. Then another friend called up, and he's like, I have this augmented reality company. It kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, this would be great. Augmented reality with the children's book. All these kids are using technology so much, but this would be a cool way for parents to read to their kids, but you could also incorporate some of the technology, and it's kind of a win on both sides. And so that was a moment I was like, you know what, the very talents, the things that I have in my hand, start try to start putting those to use. So that was kind of the first time I came out of stuff, but it's happened over and over again. I'm a believer, not a good student, but a believer that God would teach you. You have to go through things over and over again in different ways, in different formats, until you understand or get what He's trying to teach you. And so you can go the rest of your life stuck on this one thing that He's been trying to teach you. But He's always there trying to teach you, just like any good teacher and whatever. And so I've had to learn to, deal with some things over and over and over again. And hopefully I'm getting it right now, even at the age of 60. And we can talk about that part later.
That's awesome. So let me ask this question: faith or belief? What's more important in emerging stronger?
I mean, I think they both have a place, right? Faith is knowing that you can't do it. You have no control of the situation, but you believe that somebody, something, in my instance, God, is greater than all that, and so it even out of something that seems like nothing, He can take you beyond further than you can go. Belief is like, what do you believe in, and you're holding that belief in that thing. And so it may be in yourself, or it may be in the cosmos, it may be in whatever, but those can also kind of let you down. And so I think faith is good, but it also goes to faith without action is dead, and so you got to have action with that. And a lot of times on my side, I know I've just had faith and believing that something is going to happen, and that God was greater than everything, but I didn't do anything. And half of the thing is that you need to do something. Not that you have to do something in order to make it happen, but like my youngest son would say, if you're in your car and your car breaks down, and you just sit in your car and you put a little flag on the window, pretty much everybody's going to drive by you. But if you're outside your car and you're pushing it, somebody's probably going to get out and help. And so the action part is when people will help and when they see you doing something. That kind of sums it up, I think, for me.
And to follow that up, discipline or motivation?
I think motivation will lead to discipline. So if the answer is motivation, there needs to be something that gets you going. And then if you get going, it becomes a habit, and the habit becomes a discipline. So like working out, everybody's like, "Oh, you must love working out and all that stuff." It was because I was motivated to prove to everybody I wasn't dumb. I started working out because I thought that was my way to college, and then it became a habit, and then the habit became a lifestyle, and that lifestyle became discipline. So it just became who I was, a part of who I was.
And not to play semantics, but then to follow that up last on this topic, consistency or commitment?
Ooh. So pros and cons. Like consistency, you definitely need the consistency, but you can be consistently bad. And there are people go to the gym, and I see them, and they they're there for an hour every day, but they're talking and not really working out, and then they wonder why they're not good. So I think you got to be
That's great.
committed, because committed is a little bit more than just consistency. Committed means you're going to do all the things necessary to get to wherever you're trying to go.
Fantastic. Some great lessons there, applicable regardless of what you're confronting. So thank you for playing that with me. Flipping the script just a little bit, how do you forgive someone that let you down when everything was on the line and they knew it?
Uh, it's hard. Like me and my like I said, me and my wife, we've been married. It'll be 36 years in June, and we've been together 40 years. And there's things that we've had to forgive each other of, and some of it is not even knowing that the person committed that against you. And some of it is just understanding them and then understanding yourself. So some of it is like understanding who you are. And if your heart is like, if I hold on to it, it just drags me down, then you start learning you got to forgive people. And then also to make it a little bit clearer sometimes is when you start seeing things from their perspective. Maybe it was the way they were brought up. Maybe it was, stuff like that. Then you could start understanding it a little bit more. But I think a lot of it has to do with you, because ultimately I know I've been angry at people and held on to it, and they've gone on and lived their lives, and I'm still dragging down by whatever was bothering me, and so I'm the one that's the victim because I let myself become the victim, and they just they forgot about it. It's no big deal.
So extreme ownership where you only control yourself and worry less about the variables
Yeah,
around you.
you're That's just kind of like my problem is like everybody's like, yeah, you gave me 30 minutes and I could have summed it up in 2 words. So I like to
No,
do the
not at all.
stories, but yeah,
Well, the story's important, and it's the context and flavor of who you are, and don't ever apologize or back off of
yeah.
that. I applaud that. I think it's great. Ken, question: what's the ugliest thought you've ever had in the locker room about a coach, a teammate, or your own reflection?
Oh, I thought about killing my coach. I
Oh
mean, I
no!
thought about taking a bow and arrow and shooting the arrow through the back of the kneecap so that it would come out halfway through the front, and he would have to make a decision to pull it out one way or the other. I mean, I had these violent thoughts. That's probably why I play linebacker.
Yeah.
But I was frustrated, and I got frustrated easy, and frustration can easily turn to anger. You get frustrated that people don't understand you. You can't explain things the way you want to explain it, and so you turn to anger, and anger turns to violence. I was frustrated at coaches because they were trying to tell me stuff, and in the reality, they were trying to help me and make me better and correct me. But I took it as personal insults, and so for me, it was just you played a violent game, you thought violent thoughts, and I'm not gonna say which coach
Wow.
it was, but and I would never do it.
No, please
Yeah,
don't.
but it was always easy to think that, and for me, I was like a super nice. I don't say super nice, but I was a nice person. So I used to have to think violent thoughts to actually will myself to hit the quarterback as hard as I could or to get to the person. So I try to play these mental games like, that offense that quarterback just slapped my mom and that offensive tackle's trying to stop me from getting to him. And so I try to play these mental games to get myself more motivated to get to the quarterback. Little stuff like that.
Wow. I won't ask who the coach
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
That's a pretty vivid
Yeah, no,
visual, you know.
believe me, I tell people, everybody's like, "Oh, you're so nice and so kind." I'm like, "Yeah, but I was touched in the head a little bit. I was an angry kid. There's the dark side to me." But some of those things, like you have thoughts, but you would never do it. And for me, I had a vivid imagination. I watched a lot of TV, so stuff like that you could turn into writing books because now it's stuff.
Fantastic.
And my wife is like, some of my books or some of the things I've written. She's like, "Why are you so violent in your books?" And I'm like, "It's not violent. I just I read one thing somewhere where somebody said you have to grab somebody in the first chapter, and I always had that
Hmm.
something that was kind of violent in the first chapter that I thought would lead people into reading the book. So that's it.
Is there a difference between violence and aggression?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not a doctor. And I don't know. I mean, I don't have the definition, but I think aggression is normal. That's human nature. You have to sometimes be aggressive to do things, and it's a part of your body. Animals, you have to be aggressive to kill your prey. You have to do, but violence is like not only do I kill my prey, I want to hurt my prey. I want to meditate and think about how I can do it and make it hurt the most. Stuff like that becomes violent. Aggression is a part of the human body, and that's the show fight or flight. It's the normal thing. It's a normal thing, a normal part of the body.
Yeah, Ken, thank you for that. So, along those lines, aggression, frustration, violence, how did you manage teammates that didn't take the work as seriously as you did?
You look back on life and you say, if I could do this over again, that's what I would do. And that was one of the things that I look back and would say that I would be more vocal with, because I was always more about myself than it was. I knew others maybe didn't work as hard, didn't care as much, but I never vocalized it. I never said anything about it. And so if I had to go back again, that would be one of the things that I would grab some guys, and sometimes you got to shake them. Some guys you got to dig deeper. Or great coaches that I've seen, they know when to pat you on the back, but they also know when to kick you in the butt. And sometimes you need a little
Hmm.
bit of both, because some guys are angry and aggressive, just like about like I was talking about me and how angry and aggressive I was at the time. But the coaches knew that what I needed was to say, "Good job, Ken. You can do this. We need you." And I would kill myself trying to help because I believed in the team. And then some guys, you gotta say, "Hey, dude, if you don't do it, what's wrong with you?" And get in their faces. It's hard to tell which is the right one, and you don't always get it
Mm,
right. I've had coaches where I've seen them where they were close to getting knocked out, and because some of the stuff if you're screaming at the person for the wrong stuff,
right.
it can become violent.
A challenge, motivating others, not knowing where their values sit, and trying to do good for the group. I can imagine
Right.
that's a balancing
And in a
act.
short amount of time, in a game, you have to become in check with your own emotions because if you just sometimes go off of raw emotions, it works with a lot of people. I mean, you've seen some of the greatest coaches and players to look and talk about them fondly, but say they were some, nastiest, meanest coaches ever, ruin guys' careers because they get mad at them for something and cut them because that guy didn't produce. And it wasn't about helping the guy. It was about, you didn't do it my way and you're out of here. Make an example of. And then some guys have really helped guys' careers. So it's a balancing act, and that's why good coaches. It's hard to find really really good coaches.
I can appreciate that in life as well as in
Yeah,
sport. Mentors, spiritual leaders, as
yeah.
such. Can the opposite side of confidence and commitment that not many people talk about is fear, and fear not in the game, fear of losing, but in life today. What, if anything, still scares you, and what, if any, additional advice beyond spirituality and belief can you share with us about managing fear and uncertainty?
Yeah, so that's when I said God gives you lessons over and over again until you get it. That's the one lesson that for me, even though that was the one thing I was known for as being fearless on the football field, that's the one thing that's really held me back is being fearful of people, fearful of what people thought of me, fearful of judgment, trying to help everybody, and so sometimes you have to realize you can't do it all, and sometimes you have to realize you got to step into it regardless of how you feel, you have to take that first step because you don't know if that first step will lead you somewhere, better. And so you got to challenge yourself. And it's like, human nature, our bodies are made that it's repetitive. The more you do it, the more you become comfortable with it. You remember things because it's over and over again. So the more you step into challenging yourself with that fear, and it doesn't have to be stupid fear, but the more you challenge yourself into something that you're fearful of. One of it is identifying what that fear is, and then two is challenging yourself to step over it. Up until now, I mean, I'm 60 years old, and been fearful of a lot of stuff, and I've run from a lot of things, and people don't see it out front, but you do it, and so now I'm kind of like, okay, I need to step out and try it, and that's kind of where that ounce of faith comes from. Is okay,
Mhm.
I believe that even if I fail, I'm still doing it because of obedience, and you step out. And the more you start doing it because of you feel like that's what you're supposed to do, the easier it becomes to step over those boundaries of fear.
And is there a tipping point between what you're supposed to do and what you want to do?
That's what it's hard to find, and sometimes at the end you don't find out until later that what you want to do and what you're supposed to do all line up, but one was in preparation for the other. So like
Mm.
you want to do something. I like writing and I like you doing kids books and all that stuff. But then it's like, okay, but what you're supposed to do is you need to take care of your family. You need to feed your family, that type of stuff. So either you go all out in one area, or you say this is my foundation, and then you try it on the side. You try to go all out, but you have limited time and limited resources, or you give it up. And there are a lot of people who've given up dreams and desires because they knew that they had to take care of that family or business. So, I just think it's no real. You don't know the answer necessarily, but all you can do is know that everything you're doing is maybe training ground for what you're supposed to do. And the quick examples, like I didn't play basketball for a school, but I used to play street basketball when I dropped out of school. I used to play all the time. And it seemed like it was nothing. But then later down the road, that made me a good football player because I was playing basketball all the time. So a lot of times it's some of the things you do in life that you think, God, I hate doing this. It's more just training to get you to where you're supposed to be.
That's great. Can I hear from a lot of friends and colleagues that are going through tough times in business, either because of the macroeconomics today or fear of AI and being displaced. And outwardly, they put this confident front on, like, I got it, I'm going to fake it till I make it, or I've made it, and I want to keep the face. But inside, they feel really insecure, like they're walking on a knife's edge. Given your experiences, what additional advice, because we talked about spirituality, we talked about taking the first step and creating momentum, because that will perpetuate you forward. But is there anything else practice wise daily or yearly that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's trying to look at it from a broader perspective. A lot of times we get caught in a micro, I guess, micro perspective of something because you're in it and you only see it from that perspective. Those who, I know AI, I look at AI, use AI, and I'm like, God, it's going to displace a lot of people. So either you look at it and you say, well, then if that's the case, and I know that, then either I need to learn about AI or I need to become the best in my field or whatever I'm doing. You got to just start looking at it and say, well, how can I maneuver into that? Or you may say, well, you know what? I may have to get out. I may on the side start training for some other field because I know the field I'm in may be limited. You just gotta start looking at it from a different perspective. I use sports always is a lot of times analogies. You're going up against a bigger boxer. He's just a vicious person, and so all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I can't run. I can't go toe to toe with him. Well, maybe I need to sidestep. Maybe I need to do a little bit of running. Maybe I need to learn some new skills that I need to have better endurance. So by round 15, I know he's going to wear out, so I can get him by round 15. But I got to figure out how to survive for 15 rounds. You just may have to adjust your way of thinking and look at it from just like a coach or whatever, look at the film tape and say, okay, you know what, this is the enemy I'm facing. How am I going to fight that enemy? And then try to go from that perspective.
And to that end, is that where your creativity comes from and your desire to write books and do all the stand
Yeah.
up comedy?
Well, it like just recently, I you know I all these years I've been here in DC and the whole thing, and I've kind of half stepped it. I write the book, but don't market it, and I've written songs and don't push it out and all this stuff, and I but it's always I've doubted myself, and I've never really fully went into it because I still kind of had that mindset that I'm in DC, and most of the people I meet are business people and technology and all that stuff, and I'm supposed to do this, and I'm Ken Harvey, the former football player, and just recently I was kind of like, you know what, I'm a creative, and I need to be around creative people, and sometimes you got to start surrounding yourselves with the people that believe and think in the way you do. If you want to be a business person and you want to make money, you got to surround yourself with business people that know how to make money. You got to be those things, and then you also have to find people who can do the things that you can't do, that you can trust and that can help you out. So I've heard. I finally just said, you know what? I need to start learning to embrace my creativity, and instead of being just happy to have somebody say, "Oh, that was a good book." Let me do the whole picture. Let me do the everything and say, okay, you know what? Not only am I going to make the book, either I find somebody that knows how to market it, or I learn how to market it myself. But let me do the full picture. So if there's failure, then one, I got to define what failure is and what success is, and then two, if there is, then I can take it to the drawing board and say, okay, well now I need to adjust. When I did my comedy show, my stand-up comedy show, I want to face my fears, or at least let people know that it's not over yet. You turn 60, a lot of times you think that's a mark that it's going downhill from there or something like that. And this is just the beginning. But my youngest son said, "Dad, why are you doing it?" He said, "Are you doing it because you want to be a comedian?" He said, "There's no wrong answer, but if you're doing it because you want to be a comedian, then how you go about the next step is based off of what your decision is. If you're doing it because you want to be a comedian, then if no one laughs, you either got to take that moment and say, do I really want to do this, or do I really want to push, rewrite the work, keep going to the shows or whatever, Or if you're doing it because you feel like, to me, God was telling me to do it, then if only one person shows up and that one person doesn't laugh, you still did what you were supposed to do. And if you do it again, if you feel like God's telling you to do it again, then do it again. So
Outstanding. It resonates loudly. So thank you for that. Ken, we got just a few moments left, and I'd like to play a quick game with you if we could.
okay, quick answers.
Quick answers. I've got 18 questions. First thing that comes to your mind, there's no right or wrong.
Okay.
First word that comes to your mind when you hear Washington Commanders.
Uh, Legacy.
Hardest hitter you ever faced
That I hit or that I play with.
that you hit.
Okay. God. Lomas Brown.
Pre-game ritual you still do out of habit.
Listening to Enya.
Biggest misconception about you.
That I'm always nice.
Favorite piece of art you've created.
My little backpack angel.
Comedy or combat, what's harder?
Comedy.
One teammate you go to war with again in a heartbeat.
Marcus Patton.
Worst, pain. Surgery, silence, or success.
Ooh, silence.
One thing you wish you said to a coach but never did.
Shut up. No. Not so much said to him. It was more taking some inside routes instead of always trying to stay outside and contain.
Mountains or beaches?
Beaches.
One thing football never prepared you for.
Um, Financial education.
Yeah, I hear that frequently from friends. What's always in your refrigerator?
Ooh, chicken.
What's the most overrated motivational phrase?
Um, you're a good guy.
What's the most underrated virtue?
Perspective.
If you could get one more drive, who's your quarterback?
Ooh, and there's somebody I play with. I mean, well, Gus Farad. I like Gus. Gus was a good guy.
Book, album, or movie that changed your life?
The Bible.
Better feeling, smashing the quarterback or holding your newborn?
Smash. You know what?
Careful.
Yeah, no. Smashing the quarterback, instant gratification. Holding your newborn was more responsibility and awareness.
Nice. And lastly, one word for what you're currently chasing.
Purpose.
Purpose. Ken, these reflections have been amazing. Getting to know you at this level of depth. I want to thank you for your vulnerability. Sharing with the transparency and ownership that you did is remarkable. Most people don't. There are a lot of people going through a lot. I hear from military officers going civilian, teachers struggling, students. I try to help mentor as well. So I am incredibly grateful for all the truisms that you shared with us today. If there's one thing that you can share with the audience in a broad perspective about how to embrace the uncertainty of the times that we're living in outside of faith and religion and purpose, what would that kernel of truth be?
I think treat others the way you would want to be treated, because then you can see things from a different perspective. I think we've lost that sometimes about how everybody wants a quick Instagram moment, and we need to learn to respect. I mean, maybe that's the word, respect each other. Um, because if you do that and you start looking at it from a different side, I think you can grow as a person.
Fantastic. Ken, I want to thank you personally. I started with the Commanders and had my first event, an artist in residence. You showed up 35 minutes early for the event in a suit, not knowing me or the crew. Tim Hightower had invited you. You introduced yourself to me and my family out of the gates. My two daughters fell in love with you immediately. Like, who is that guy? Your son driving a motorbike around the world.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. I was challenged to find my way in a new sports environment and a new team with people I did not know. And you just embraced me like I had been a teammate forever. And I'll never forget
I
that.
appreciate
I
it.
very much appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you, man. I look at you on the artistic side of where I want to be. So, we all have our heroes, and you're doing what I want to do, that I've hidden for so long. So as much as you think, whatever you thought of me then and now, I think that of you. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
I'm blessed to have you in our circles. And we, myself, Anna, my community, my circle is here to help you as you do more comedy and more art. How do people find you? What can we put in our show notes to push audiences and eyes and ears your way?
So my wife and my boys created a website for me. It's still kind of temporary, but I think it's Ken Harvey Enterprises with an S .com, and it should have some of the stuff on there, and also updating it more. But I think that'll help at least start knowing who I am on more of the creative side. I think people know I'm creative, but not to extent. I've written songs, I've written books, writing screenplays. So it'd be kind of cool. So yeah,
Outstanding. Ken,
appreciate you,
this has
brother.
been a blessing. You are an amazing human. Shine bright, shine strong. You're always fit, so you're an inspiration to me as I'm
Yeah,
aging. I try to be more like
yeah,
Ken. And thank you for your time, brother. I appreciate you.
not a problem. Thank you.